Are we ready? All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Vice Chair Delegate Janelle Wilkins, and welcome to the Ways and Means Committee. The date is February 15th, 2024, and we are calling our bill hearings to order. Our first bill is by Delegate Rogers, House Bill 952. And Delegate, if you'd like to bring anyone up, we do have David Dragic's registered. You can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Wilkins and members of the mighty Ways and Means Committee. I sort of feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm back. So, and I know this is a topic that you've heard before. So I'm here today to respectfully request and for the record, Mike Rogers, Delegate Legislative District 32, Anne Arundel County. I respectfully request a favorable report for House Bill 952. This bill will increase the amount of subtraction modification under the Maryland income tax for individuals who are at least 55 years of age for retirement income received as a result of the individual's military service. The modification operates under a 3-year tiered model. As a result of expanding the subtraction modification, Maryland can expect to keep more of our heroes here in Maryland and will encourage them to continue to live and spend their money in our state. Maryland should not be a farm team for neighboring states. 38 states have fully exempted military retirement income from taxation, which positions all of these states as potentially more desirable retirement locations in Maryland. Expanding the income tax subtraction not only benefits Maryland's retired veterans, it also benefits the state's economy and culture. Their knowledge and experience benefits prospective employers and communities. So again, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 952.
Chair Wilkins, members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of Delegate Rogers' bill. I'm Dave Dragic, a retired Army Colonel and Legislative Director of the Maryland Military Coalition, representing over 150,000 uniformed services connected individuals, which includes military retirees. There are nearly 1,000 fewer military retirees in Maryland since 2020, part of the 36,000 decline in veterans since then. According to the Comptroller's recent economic report, we've had stalled economic growth since 2017, migration to states like the Carolinas and Florida, a decline in the labor participation rate, and slow employment and wage growth. A ranking from the Tax Foundation of 45th out of 50 states for its individual income tax, behind each of the 4 states touching our borders. This data and more is in our written testimony for your review. This bill may appear to be a tax cut for the military retirees. However, the fundamental issue for this bill is whether Maryland will begin taking steps to retain this critical human capital military retirees under the age of 55 or continue letting this valuable resource migrate away. When military retirees and their families leave Maryland, we are deprived of revenue from income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and their economic benefits that would be received for up to 25 years if they stayed. The question for this committee is whether we want to take a small but significant step towards mitigating these economic issues and helping to retain the human capital to improve the state's economy going forward or continue down the current path. It's your call. The coalition strongly supports HB 952 and asks for a favorable report from the committee. We'd like to thank Delegate Rogers for sponsoring the legislation and appreciate his leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, I do see a few questions. Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Rogers, for this very, very important bill. I have a question. Are we also exploring, there might be other legislation as to retirement income tax or income tax subtractions for service members who are in active duty?
I know that that's something that's come up before, but I don't know if it's something that we're tackling this particular legislative session.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I know that as members of the General Assembly, we all have different backgrounds, and whenever there's any of us that have some subject matter expertise, it generally adds value to the conversation. Do you have any connection to the subject matter of this bill, or is it in any way relevant to you?
I do. So as a military retiree, it is a bit personal. And I'll just share a personal story that I hadn't planned to share, but in 2015, when I retired, I strongly considered moving to York, Pennsylvania, because I could still take advantage of working here in Maryland, but not having to pay the taxes. And probably the one thing that stopped me was that my son was beginning his freshman year at Meade High School. So I elected to stay here to allow him not to be uprooted. And so ended up having to pay those taxes. I will tell you, and I think, again, I'm probably the example, and I've shared this with both the governor and Secretary Woods. So I would like to think that Maryland certainly took advantage of me remaining in the state, because I went on to serve on the HOA in my community. I went on to coach football for 5 years. I went on to be the PTSA president at Meade High School, and now I'm a delegate in the Maryland General Assembly. And I think that's just emblematic of other military folks who are doing things out in the community. It's part of the culture of service that military members bring.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your service to country and community, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Henson. And on behalf of the entire committee, thank you for your service, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. Seeing no other questions, that ends the hearing on House Bill 952.
And for the record, I know that there's a bill coming up later, 713, and I'm on that with Delegate Griffith, and I just wanted to say, me too.
Thank you, Delegate. Noted. We'll now move to House Bill 744, Delegate Chang.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present House Bill 744. I'm Mark Chang, member of Maryland General Assembly, District 32. It is the Income Tax Biotechnology Investment Incentive Tax Program, pass-through entity, or the BITC program. The state of Maryland is really a world attraction for life sciences and biotech firms to come to our states because of the programs like the BITC program. BITC program currently, state of Maryland appropriates $12 million to this fund. And what it does, it helps startups to come to the state of Maryland, but also know that the state of Maryland is a strong partner. And through the venture capitalist world, the VC world, that there are really incentives to be able to help with these different startups and also incentivize the different, really next generation of technology to come to the state of Maryland, stay in the state of Maryland. What helps these venture capitalists come to our state and stay in the state are pass-through entities, PTEs, or special purpose vehicles. And what these entities do is they help attract these investors and these venture capitalists to invest in these different startups that are all across our state, and also specifically in opportunity zones. And it's a multi-level process where the pass-through entities help these different investors be able to go through all the paperwork and to be able to have their income taxes taken care of. But on the back end, at the very end, though, as far as with the credits, it's often cumbersome for those individual investors to be able to get those credits or to get those refunds. And so what this bill would do is allow that the pass-through entities be able to make those refunds or make those credits to those individual investors. What happens is those individual investors, it saves them from the cumbersome paperwork and also the process of being able to receive those refunds or credits. And also it streamlines the process. So it's more of an incentive where they can focus on making those additional investments and also really just more of an attraction for our VC or venture capitalists to come to our state of Maryland to invest in it and to focus on what they really want to focus on is identifying those startups that are able to really help all of us. And these biotechs and these life science startups, they help everything from stroke victims to really just activities of daily living and other cancer research. And so they're really at the forefront of this. That's what this bill would do, and really appreciate the consideration of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for bringing this bill. Are there any questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Bill 744. We'll now call up House Bill 787. Delegate Buckle. Yes, 787 and 803. And it looks like you're solo on both.
I heard that, Eversol. I hear everything. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, this is House Bill 787. It is a bill co-sponsored by each member of the Allegheny County delegation, although it is not technically a delegation bill, because we were advised by DLS because of the nature of the bill's substance that it may not be best to do it as a delegation bill. The bill is modeled after, in a sort, after bills that have been passed in recent years by our colleagues in Baltimore City for the creation of the West North Avenue Development Authority, and in Prince George's County for the creation of the Prince George's Gateway Development Authority. And so that's kind of where the modeling of the bill came from. It simply creates, it does not require a penny of state funding. It does not require any staffing. As you can see, it has no fiscal note. It does create what's called the Allegheny Regional Recreational Economic Development Authority. The reason for the bill is this. Allegheny County has a variety of challenges, many of which I've spoken to with many of you over the years. One of the challenges that this bill could perhaps directly address is we don't have a reasonable amount of recreational facilities, not only for our own citizens and children, but for an ability to provide what we would call recreational tourism. Many of you that may have children that are going through and playing sports and other recreational activities understand that travel team sports and those kinds of concepts have become a huge factor. There are communities throughout the Mid-Atlantic that have significant recreational facilities that are able to attract tens of thousands of families and tourists to their communities during the year for their children to participate in soccer, lacrosse, football, basketball, volleyball, softball, wide variety of recreational activities. We intend to pair, if you look at the way the bill is set up, I won't go through all the details of it, but we're going to request and require that everybody work together. I'm sure, like just back in some of your counties and communities, sometimes everyone doesn't work together as well as what you would like, unless you sort of force them into an organization to make them work together. I'm not impugning anyone in our county of not working together, but we all believe that we would be best served if we could marshal the time, resources, and thoughts of our local community college that has some recreational facilities. Frostburg State University, the only four-year public university in the state west of basically the Baltimore County line, essentially. And then our county facilities themselves, the city of Cumberland and the city of Frostburg, which are the two largest municipalities in our communities that have some recreational facilities. And so the bill is silent as to funding, as the two predicate bills from Baltimore and Prince George's were. Funding is an issue for us to address as we go forward to marshal those resources from a variety of sources to try to give us an opportunity to come up with a plan and develop things so that, you know, maybe our kids have better soccer fields. Maybe our kids can get an ice rink. And not only just for our kids, but maybe we can use this to help grow our community, grow our amenities. It's a wonderful place. Many of you have been there. It's a great place to come out for 2 or 3 days with your kids, stay. We have a lot of resources that are fit for that, but we need these recreational facilities to be moved forward. And this is our request for the committee to give us the power to start out doing that in a collective way. So it's fairly simple.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions? Seeing none, that concludes your hearing on House Bill 787. Let's move to House Bill 803.
This is also a very, very simple bill. It is a 3-point-something billion tax cut for the middle class of Maryland. Very simple concept. I'm sure you'll all want to get favorable on this and move it immediately. That's somewhat facetious, but it's not in this sense. What the bill does, when I got elected here 10 years ago, one of the reasons that I came and one of the things that I heard, not only people from where I live, but people that I know and have been close to throughout the state, is that Maryland has a fairly significant tax burden on its middle class, on its teachers, on its fire professionals, sometimes on its government workers, on its business professionals, its small business operators. We have a fairly high burden on our middle class, and I think that's not what anyone really intends. It's just built into our revenue forecasts now, and it is really hard to change those things. Everything we do in this committee produces, not everything, but many things produces a fiscal reality, and we shy away from the policy because of the mathematics that are done for us by the analysts. What the bill does, here's the thing. The number one thing I want you to think about what the bill does is we're currently taxing at 4.75% of their taxable income people who make over $3,000 in the state of Maryland. It has not changed for years. If you make $15,000, 4.75%, $21,000, $25,000, 4.75%. So on the one hand, we are enacting policies that say these are people in poverty and these are people that we need to provide programs for and earned income tax credits for and everything else. But on the other hand, we're not adjusting our tax brackets from what they used to be generations ago. It makes no sense. So first thing the bill does, 0% if you're a single filer up to $15,000 of income, 0% if you're a joint filer up to $30,000 in income. So it is a tax cut of significant proportions for the poorest among us, for those who are trying to work and create taxable income, but really are not able to sustain themselves on those types of salaries and taxable income. They're not going to have to bother, paying taxes or worrying about having taxes withheld from them here in Maryland anymore. One of the other interesting things that it does, it adjusts the brackets. That's really what we try to do, or we haven't changed the brackets in many years. And, for an example, we kick in at 5% for an individual making $100,000 or a family making $150,000. So there's a pretty good chance that if you live in Howard County, wealthy county, Anne Arundel counties, almost all, a huge proportion of your residents and your citizens are getting kicked in at that 5% rate that becomes one of the higher rates. We move that number up both for joint filers and for individual filers. And the entire purpose is to acknowledge that as inflation rises and as salaries rise, you can now have a family that perhaps one spouse or one member of the family is a teacher, 15, 20 years experience. The other member is a firefighter or a nurse, 15, 20 years experience. No one is going to suggest that they are wealthy or that they are the kind of folks that we need to be assuming are in the top 1%. However, if they make $150,000 a year up combined, we are essentially putting them in the higher brackets. And so that's what the bill does. It has a significant fiscal effect. You all understand that our state income taxes are higher than many states around us. Pennsylvania has a flat income tax of 3.07%. I'm not sure I agree with flat taxes in that concept, but that's what theirs are. Florida, where we lose a tremendous amount of our revenue a year, all the analysis suggests that we lose a lot of tax filers and a lot of potential income to the state of Florida for various reasons. They have no personal income tax. I would also suggest that, our tax system, New Jersey, West Virginia, some of the states around us are in our general area, their tax rates and their brackets are actually more progressive and more forgiving for the working middle class, the young professional, the person who's trying to start a business, not for the wealthy, not for the rich, not for the millionaires, but just for folks who are working hard and trying to make the American dream happen for them in Maryland. So I hope that the committee considers the bill. I'm sure we can't pass it with a 3. I wanted to get an award, Madam Vice Chair. When Delegate Jay Walker was here, he liked to give out an award for, the largest tax cut fiscal bill. And I've been here 10 years. The largest one I saw was like $2 billion. hold my fiscal note. I got you right here. So, you know, it's, I don't want you to get scared of the 4.8. The 4.8 is because it's balanced over a year and a half. It's not 4.8 billion a year. It's in the threes, but it's significant. But I truly believe that we have to take a hard look at how much we're taxing our middle class and those trying to aspire to become upper middle class and become people who can contribute to society in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Delegate. I'm sure the subcommittee will take that into careful consideration.
Delegate Feldmark and I are already working hard on it. We've got a plan.
Awesome. Any questions? All right, seeing none, there's a question. Oh,
So just remember who you sit next to.
Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, this is why I have this question, Delegate.
That's my friend.
Because I've, had a chance to get to know you better, and I know you've been on this committee for longer than I have. I'll just leave it at that.
Make me old.
But no, I did want to ask though, because I know how thoughtful you are. Just wondering, considering the fiscal note and the $4.8 billion, the decrease from revenue, if you've given any thought to how we would make up that loss.
I'm very interested in looking at sort of creative ways to broaden the base, perhaps, of our taxes. I'm not talking about sales taxes on services necessarily, but I honestly, Montgomery County Executive Elric and I are probably about as far apart as what you can get on 95% of the issues. But when he was here a week or so ago, testifying about one of Delegate Polakovich Carr's bills, he made some interesting points of how different states, and Virginia is always a good model, or at least a comparison point for us, how different states have different taxing authorities. They sometimes have regional county by county taxing authorities. They sometimes have different taxing systems that work specifically just for a particular purpose. It doesn't go into the general fund and get bled through. I think those are conversations that we can have. And I also think, and to be fair, I think Governor Moore has done this to a point, we may have to accept the fact that our overall rate of spending is not going to go up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% a year. The last 2 years, it's been fairly flat, and it might be fairly flat for a couple of more years until hopefully the economy grows. And I think that providing middle class and upper middle class tax cuts can perhaps grow that economy and keep more of those folks here and keep them more incentivized to stay. If the pie grows, you can continue to keep the same or a smaller slice of it and get more pie. If the pie shrinks, you're going to have to keep carving out a bigger and bigger slice for yourself, i.e. government, in order to eat. And that becomes a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate it.
No problem. Is Delegate Shalega here? No. Oh, there you are. All right, we will call now House Bill 606, Delegate Shalega.
Good afternoon, Ways and Means. For the record, Delegate Kathy Shalega here with House Bill 606, Sales and Use Tax Baby Products Exemption. This is a simple bill, which I think 90% of us start out our testimony with, this very simple bill. But it will expand the sales tax exemption for baby products. So you may recall that we exempted diapers and some formula and some other things for babies a number of years ago. And so this is going to expand that. And the obvious reasons, we want to make sure that families, new parents, have the items they need to raise happy, healthy babies. And just last week, we had a bill in my committee and HGO, House Bill 177, Hospitals, Care of Infants After Discharge. And this bill talked about the importance of safe sleep for infants and how the health of infants can be jeopardized if families do not have the equipment and the information about safe sleeping habits for those babies. That these safe sleep practices, this bill was supported by the Department of Health, Hospital Association, Baltimore City Department of Health, the Maryland chapter of the Academy of Pediatrics, and many other groups. So it was great to have that cross-pollination where we are seeing in HGO the importance of that. So this this bill would simply expand it to make sure that families could afford to get their babies all the things that they need. On my panel, I have Jeff with me today.
Madam Vice Chair Wilkins and members of the committee, my name is Jeff Trimbath, and I'm the president of the Maryland Family Institute. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in support of the bipartisan House Bill 606, making all baby products tax-free here in Maryland. Maryland's greatest treasure is its children, and the primary stewards of that treasure are the child's parents. This legislation seeks to enhance the tax code by expanding essential care items for babies. I remember well, and I'm sure many of you do as well, coming home from the hospital, Anne Arundel Medical Center right down the road, with each of my 3 children. It was a journey filled with excitement and stress. For many Maryland parents, the looming financial burdens associated with baby products add an extra layer of concern. This simple yet impactful measure aims to alleviate the tax burden on parents of newborns for a variety of items crucial for infant care, from baby food and formula to wipes, high chairs, booster seats, and infant clothing. Maryland already exempts certain items like diapers and infant car seats, baby oil, baby powder, but this bill adds essential items which are currently missing. Additionally, there are 35 centers for women and maternal care in our state, offering valuable resources to expectant and early mothers. These centers receive millions of dollars worth of donated baby products, showcasing the generosity of Maryland citizens in addressing the immediate needs of new mothers. This bill further incentivizes this private charity and sends a clear message to Maryland's moms. We see you and we support you. It is a collective win for the state's parents and a victory for Maryland's babies, and that's why we're asking for your favorable consideration of House Bill 606. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
There's one.
Oh, who? I didn't see you. Okay. Mayor Kuno.
For bringing this bill. Do you happen to know, I was looking at the fiscal note, it says, 10 million in loss in revenue. Is there a way to find out whether that's based on like all the items that you want to include or just some of them?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I get,
Okay.
probably as most fiscal notes, it's their best guess.
Mhm. Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thanks. Sure.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 606. Is Delegate Schmidt here? Do not see him. Okay, we will move to Delegate Grammer, House Bill 674.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one witness, but I'm welcome anybody you want to bring up.
Just Robert Doyle is signed up to testify.
Sounds good. I'll start with your permission.
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 674. House Bill 674 phases out the taxation of retirement income in Maryland over a period of 3 years. It's the one topic we all hear about year after year. It's the cost of living in our state. We hear about it in our district. We hear about it in our communities. Maryland has and increasingly suffers from an abnormally high cost of living. The taxation of retirement income in our state makes these unrelenting costs of living punitive for retirees whose fixed incomes rarely ever meet their needs. It also incentivizes people to leave our state. Maryland has many aging communities, people who have lived in Maryland their entire lives, people who have worked and paid taxes in Maryland their entire lives, and they wish to age in place, close to families, friends, and familiar communities. People of every district want to be able to retire near their children and grandchildren. When I became a member of the legislature in 2015, the size of the budget was over $39 billion. Last year, the size of the budget was over $58 billion. That is over a 63% increase in 8 years. The size of our budget has exploded. When do the most vulnerable people of our state, our retirees, when do they get relief? It is clear we can afford to stop taxing our retirees out of the state in the face of skyrocketing inflation, which is putting those on fixed incomes underwater. We should eliminate the taxation of retirement income and keep Marylanders in Maryland. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd ask for a favorable on House Bill 674.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, members of the Ways and Means, including Delegate Henson from my District 30 team. I'm Bob Doyle, testifying on behalf of the State Legislative Committee of Maryland Federation of National Active Retired Federal Employees, or NARF. And we, for the continuing protection and benefit of our senior members, as well as all Maryland seniors, we're hoping to get from you a favorable report on HB 674. We've submitted a written statement with additional information, including our data-driven research of Dr. Robert Goldberg of our committee, but I'll just highlight a couple of our points now. As Delegate Grammer has said, Maryland has one of the highest cost of living and state income taxes in the nation. This discourages aging in place in Maryland and encourages seniors to migrate to senior-friendly states. Many of these states will actively recruit seniors with tax incentives because they recognize the value of seniors as economic engines for job and revenue generation. 9 states do not have any state income tax, and 14 states, including some of the most progressive in the country, exempt all or part of federal pensions from state and local taxes. And the cost to Maryland due to senior migration is very large. We recognize the fiscal and policy note shows losses in revenue from this bill for the state, which is the natural consequence of lower or no state income taxes for seniors. But the bills don't discuss the intangibles. We heard earlier today about keeping our military heroes home. Let's keep our senior community volunteer heroes home as well. Maryland can't afford to lose retirees who contributed so much, still have more to give. Seniors are enthusiastic volunteers who devote many hours of work to helping their communities, including volunteering in schools and hospitals. Seniors who no longer feel hard-pressed to save it, will spend it. This is good for everyone. I'll stop by saying I meant to thank Delegate Grammer as a champion of seniors for his entire career for this bill and others. And Maryland North, please ask the committee to give a favorable report to HB 674. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 674. Delegate Schmidt, House Bill 626. And there is a Robert Phillips can come up.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins. I apologize for my tardiness. As you know, judiciary can get quite lengthy over there. We don't move bills as fast as you do here. So thank you for that. And esteemed members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Stuart Schmidt, Anne Arundel County, District 33B. I'm here in front of you presenting House Bill 626. Very simple piece of legislation, aren't they all? It increases the income subtraction modification for qualifying volunteer fire rescue emergency services personnel and public safety volunteers, which we would call public auxiliary officers. Current subtraction for 2024 is $7,000. This legislation raises this deduction to $10,000 beginning with 2025 tax year. What that will do, bring it more in line with professional firefighters, which is presently at a $20,000 deduction. And this legislation brings that closer in line. In recent years, our first responders truly have faced challenges and dangers unlike they have ever seen. In the face of these challenges, this bill would provide a very small tax benefit for these individuals who have encountered so many of new and additional difficulties. I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 626.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Co-Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. My name is Robert Phillips. I am the Legislative Chair for the Maryland State Firefighters Association, MSFA. I'm here to represent our volunteer fire service and EMS. We have approximately 25,000 volunteers across the state. 10 to 15 years ago, we had 35,000. That's what's happened. We've lost about a third of our volunteer source. With that being said, how do we get volunteers to come volunteer, start, and stay? There was a study that was done last year through legislature that we would study volunteer recruitment and retention. One of the items was that we had to address how much time does it take to be a volunteer, just to become a volunteer. Present time, it takes 360 hours from the time a person walks through the door to they can actually get on a piece of fire apparatus and provide a service. It's time away from the house, it's time away from the family. It's get up and leave in the middle of a meal, miss a birthday, miss a Christmas. That's what we do. But we're volunteers. We do it proudly. But how do we get someone today to do that? We're looking for tools to help, and this is a tool that will help moving this amount of money, moving it from 7,000 to 10,000. But let's put it in perspective. What does that movement, that 3,000 extra dollars cost you? Let's talk about the gross number, $10,000. If we were to lose the volunteers and you had to start staffing the stations with a career staff, and that's happening in many, many counties today, you would cost you $1 million a year for the staff. But it only costs you about $700 a year per person in the tax credit. That is a return on investment I think this committee can afford in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 626. House Bill 713 and Delegate Griffith, are you doing these? Delegate Griffith, would you like to do these together or just back to back? Okay, okay, so we'll start with 713.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the accommodation. I appreciate that. Colleagues, for the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith, and I'm here requesting a favorable report on HB 713, the military income tax subtraction modification for military retirement income individuals under the age of 25. Currently, a military retiree under the age of 55 in Maryland may be exempt to up to $12,500 in military retirement income being taxed, and if 55 or older, may be exempt up to $20,000. As you might recall, this was a welcomed and needed change in the right direction as a result of Governor Wes Moore's and his administration's leadership during the 2023 legislative session. In seeking to build upon this, HB 713 simply removes the age barrier of 55 years and older to access the $20,000 exemption. Although any deduction is good, any deduction is a good deduction, our veterans and their families have sacrificed much to protect and defend the Constitution, this great nation, and our great state. They have put their lives on the line, left their families to serve, and have returned home to Maryland to start their journey again in civilian life. This simple change will allow more veterans, their families, and their loved ones to access a bit more of their pension, and in turn will likely invest that back into the Maryland economy, whether it's through supporting a small business, purchasing goods, or investing their retirement options. In any avenue, not only does this provide a small token of deep appreciation for their sacrifice and service, but also supports the Maryland economy by providing an opportunity for greater consumer investment. In the past, we've been challenged with the prospect that many veterans and their complete service have chosen to live with their families outside of Maryland. Many military members enlisted at age 18 and are eligible for retirement at age 38. These individuals, many who still work a full-time job while in military retirement, would not be eligible for another 17 years to access the $20,000 threshold, and as a result, are incentivized to take their skills and dedication to service to a state where their retirement is not taxed. We want to change that narrative, especially when we consider the pending base realignment and closure, otherwise known as BRAC, considerations that we are aware are not likely far off. With BRAC considerations weighing quality of life and military pensions as top factors in their scoring, now is the time to act if we wish to preserve the infrastructure in our state. We want to encourage our veterans to return home, return to what they knew before they left for service, grow their families, businesses, careers here in Maryland, and we want to show we understand what it takes to make that decision. That we understand that all the factors which they consider, especially quality of life after retirement, with more than 3,348,000 veterans in the state, and at least 38 other states already fully exempting taxes on military pensions. It's time to act now. The only other point I want to make is this fiscal note is only $3 million. So for only $3 million, we can create parity for all military retirees and their pensions. And with that, Madam Chair, I appreciate it and I urge a favorable report.
Chair Atterbury, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of Delegate Griffith's bill. For the record, I'm Dave Dragic, Legislative Director of the Maryland Military Coalition. Now, the Moore Miller administration has adopted a military saying, leave no one behind. Unfortunately, Maryland is leaving behind military retirees, especially those under the age of 55, by the taxing of their military retirement income, when, as Delegate Griffith pointed out, 38 other states not only don't tax that income, but also have no age restriction. Absent the legislature passing HB 952 and the Senate counterpart SB 346, HB 713 is the least that could be done for military retirees under 55. Further, when compared to the 4 states that touch Maryland, we would only be better than the state of Delaware. Pennsylvania and West Virginia do not tax military retirement income and have no age restriction. Virginia has removed their age restriction and exempted 30,000 this year and will go to 40,000 next year. Meanwhile, Maryland with this bill will only exempt $20,000. As we pointed out in our written testimony, the fundamental issue is whether Maryland wants to retain this valuable human capital coming from the military that is between the ages of 35 and 54, or continue to see it leave. If not, it will be these retirees leaving Maryland behind as they relocate to other states upon retiring from active duty. Coalition supports HB 713 and asks for a favorable report from the committee. And we'd like to thank Delegate Griffith for sponsoring this legislation and appreciate his leadership on this issue.
Thank you. Questions? Well, I saw Delegate Hornberger first, so I'll call Hornberger.
Madam Chair. A great bill. Just in terms of the fiscal note, I wanted to drill in there a little bit. So the folks that are potentially leaving that exist in this window of time between, you said, maybe 38 years old and 55, does the fiscal note take into account the taxable income from their second job or second career versus if they leave and no longer reside here?
It absolutely does not. And these individuals who are leaving under the age of 55, these are the individuals that are most likely to have a second job. And typically military veterans have well-paying jobs, disposable income, and heavily invest in our economy. So while we're losing some of their taxable retirement, we're losing all of their main income in their current job. So it does not factor in the net effect, which I'm sure would actually put this bill into a net positive effect if we did factor that in.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
May I also add something to the delegate's answer?
Sorry.
The information in the fiscal note is based on fiscal year 2020. That's almost 4 years ago. That's inadequate data. Our data shows, especially from the Department of Defense, the number of retirees has declined, as I testified in earlier, since 2020. The fiscal note says that amount will stay, that the number of retirees will stay the same. We don't see that. And we've questioned the Comptroller's office and the Department of Legislative Service with regards to these forecasts. And they will use 1099 forms, the number of 1099 forms, which all retirees get from the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. But we don't understand why the Comptroller's Office of the Department of Legislative Services can't go to the Maryland income tax form, specifically form 502 SU, and look on the form to see exactly what deduction is being taken for military retirement pay. So from our perspective, this committee and as well as the other side of the legislature, you're getting inadequate or outdated information on which to make a decision. And these fiscal notes could do better.
Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So along Delegate Hornberger's, along the line of his questioning, because I would have expected the fiscal note to be neutral or not positive. So if the number of military families is declining, do we know what the value, Delegate Hornberger's question was based on that person still working and so forth, but just a family leaving the area with all the tax, income tax, sales tax from them spending, do we know what the value of an average family is in the state of Maryland?
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. We use Tax Foundation information and compared that with census data. So the average military household, and this is based on FY 2021 data, in this state is about a little over two people, 2.37 people. When you look at the Tax Foundation data and take that and multiply it on a per capita basis, the state individual income tax collections for a military household would be $3,916. The state and local individual income tax collections for the average local income tax, state and local, is $6,541. The general sales tax collections for a military household, $2,100. State and local excise taxes, $2,100. State and local property tax collections, $4,100. And the average income, and it's pretty close based on the letter we got from the comptroller's office with regards to calendar year 22 of these households, is about $165,000. The comptroller said for FY 20, it was $170,000. And that's only gone up since then because of wage increases and inflation. And when you look at the next up to 25 years for somebody who retires after 20 years of service, that's an opportunity loss by these people leaving and taking, as I testified on earlier bill on 952, they take all that tax money with them to someplace else. And if you look at our written testimony, we have a graph on attachment 4 that shows what happened when North Carolina fully exempted military retirees and uniformed services while Virginia didn't. And you can see the number plunging for veterans, military retirees in Virginia, while it increased significantly in North Carolina, which is why Governor Youngkin last year got the 55-year-old age restriction removed and is still trying to get raise their 40,000 to full exemption to match the 38 other states.
So you added some pieces in there that I wasn't expecting. So I wasn't able to keep up with all the math.
Okay.
4,000 for this, 3,000 for that. I mean, roughly, is it 15,000, 20,000? I lost track, but it's a good number.
Well, I can provide those to you.
I would appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate the answer.
I got a calculator. Would you like a calculator?
Wait, we have the math teacher over there. What was the number?
Any other questions?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 713. Delegate Griffith, House Bill 714.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can my panel please join me? I got one favorable and
Absolutely.
2 favorable amendments.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith. I'm requesting a favorable report on HB 714, the income tax subtraction modification, public safety employee retirement income. HB 714 increases the maximum value of the income tax subtraction modification for public safety employees retirement income from $15,000 to $20,000 who is at least 55 years old. This may sound familiar. As you recall, last year, the Maryland General Assembly passed HB 554 that increased the deduction for military retirement income received by individuals who were at least 55 years old to $20,000. I was honored to support this adjustment, and this is something that I've championed for many years. In this light, and in order to bring the public safety employee subtraction into line with HB 554, HB 714 raises the threshold from $15,000 to $20,000. It's important to note that the prior passage of HB 554 subtracted modifications for military retirement income and public safety retirement income were the same as at $15,000. Not only will this put a little extra in the pockets of families during these hard economic times, but making this adjustment will help recognize the important work our public safety retirees have done and will continue to do for our state. As I've shared before, we want our hometown heroes remaining in Maryland and investing and stimulating their communities, and this bill provides a simple incentive for them to do just that. We also know that there's an economic benefit to keeping public safety retirees in our state, as many of these individuals still have many skills to offer our communities and are dedicated public servants. I'd also like to share that HB 714 is cross-filed with Senator Jack Bailey. Thank you for your time, and I request a favorable report.
Chairwoman Atterbury, members of the Ways and Means Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. I am Tom Skinner. I am the first Vice President of Professional Firefighters of Maryland and a lieutenant in the Baltimore City Fire Department for the last 33 years. I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 714. I want to take a moment to thank Delegate Griffith and our co-sponsors for their work on this bill. You've heard a lot about tax credits. A lot of this is very similar to a Me Too, asking for a modest increase from $15,000 to $20,000. The original bill was passed in 2017. There have been no increases in almost 7 years. With inflation, the value of this has only decreased and will continue to be diminished. We're asking for an increase in the modification makes Maryland more attractive and competitive for our retirees. Right now, the Professional Firefighters of Maryland represents over 10,000 active and retired members. A lot of them are leaving. Too many of our retirees are leaving not to go to Florida. Why they would, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but the ones that are leaving towards Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, and other very local states. And the only reason that they're leaving is the tax burden. Their children are here, their families are here, their grandchildren are here. There's really no reason not to try and keep them here as well as the economic impact that the delegate already spoke about. Having retirees stay here also helps keep jobs here. Doctors, dentists, car salesmen, everything that we do with that money that we get to keep gets spent here. Monies that leave with the taxpayers are gone forever. I'd like to thank you for your consideration on this, and I'd like to urge a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Chair and delegates, for letting us speak today. Hello, my name is James Carroll. I'm a proud resident of Annapolis, Maryland. I served the residents and visitors of the nation's capital for more than 29 years of the District of Columbia Fire and EMS service. Firefighters don't, wait a minute. Okay, first after that, first of all, I want to say thank you for calling this hearing and allowing me to provide testimony today regarding HB 714. Firefighters don't count how many lives we save or the number of fires we extinguish, but I assure you, I know what it's like to carry a young child's life in my hands and what it feels like desperately perform CPR on a human whose life is fading away before my eyes. I'm testifying today seeking an amendment to be made to the wording of HB 714 to include the District of Columbia, allowing me and others who faithfully serve the District of Columbia Fire Department to benefit from this legislation. I grew up in Prince George's County. The call to serve came early for me. I served as a volunteer firefighter in Landover and Bowie, Maryland, beginning when I was just 15 years old. I never looked back, and I joined the DC Fire and EMS system in 1987. With most of my career spent as a technician at Rescue 3 in Anacostia Southeast. We gave everything we had, no matter the danger in the profession. When we're called into action, we don't care where someone is from. So I can tell you how many Maryland lives my crew and I saved over the course of time in the streets of DC and Maryland. There's over 600 DC firefighter residents retired in the state of Maryland that could benefit from this. They could either drive an hour and a half to Delaware or 2 hours to Pennsylvania with better tax incentives, but they chose to stay here. We feel we're an asset to the state of Maryland with the training we have as first responders. Retirement isn't always guaranteed in our line of work. When my last tour in it, I chose to stay in Maryland and spend the time here. I appreciate the focus of this bill and want to thank all of those who worked to bring it to fruition to benefit all the firefighting community. In closing, I urge you to cover your Maryland citizens and former members of our nation's Capitol Fire Department, HB 714, to consider amending this legislation to include the District of Columbia, because I know the hundreds of active and retired firefighters who call Maryland home most certainly deserve it. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and remaining members of the Ways and Means Committee. Thank you for calling this hearing and allowing me to provide testimony today regarding HB 714. My name is William Griffin. I'm here today seeking the support of the committee to make an amendment to HB 714. I have called Maryland home for well over 26 years. I'm also a retiree of the District of Columbia Fire EMS Department. Serving the visitors and residents of the District of Columbia was and remained a source of pride to me. I am here today to urge the committee to consider an amendment to include the District of Columbia to the verbiage of the legislation. This small change can certainly provide a big difference to all the other Maryland residents who, like me, served with honor in the District of Columbia Fire EMS Department for well over 25 years. My wife is also a retired first responder who served for over 32 years with the Metropolitan Police Department. I appreciate the work of your committee as well as other state legislation that is aimed to recognize as well as support today's first responder. The individuals that chose these professions are, in my opinion, some of the very best in today's society. Their work each day in our community is invaluable in bringing stability and preserving the quality of life we all enjoy. This is one of the driving forces when our first responders decide to look elsewhere to live after retirement. I love living in the great state of Maryland, yet the impact on what we pay in taxes as retirees can be daunting and negatively affect our way of life. I know that an amendment to HB 714 to include other Maryland residents who serve the District of Columbia would be of great benefit to them. Thank you, Madam Chair, along with all the other members of the committee for holding this hearing today.
Thank you. And first, thank you for serving as a first responder, whether it was in Maryland or the District of Columbia. Delegate, do you know what, if the amendment was added, what that impact would be fiscally and about how many folks that would loop in?
I do not.
Okay. That's probably something we got to find out. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Delegate Griffin. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 714. Delegate Young, House Bill 753. Delegate Young, this is your first bill in the committee? Yay! Yep, come on.
Now, in keeping with the theme of the day, this is a simple bill, everyone. But I actually mean it. I think that you all will agree at the conclusion of the testimony. To begin, my name is Kaylin Young, for the first time in Ways and Means, 45th Legislative District, Baltimore, Maryland, here in support of House Bill 753, Economic Development, Maryland Technology Development Corporation Application and Reporting Requirements. So Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I just want to first and foremost thank you all for allowing me to speak today. But this bill really focuses on enhancing the application and reporting requirements that we ask from TechCo. It asks TechCo when someone applies to provide an option for people to provide certain demographic data to TechCo, so that way we can actually track who's applying and, of course, where those awards are going and who they're going to. And this is especially important as we grow TechCo's portfolio, given the good work that they do. TechCo has already begun this work, and what this bill simply does is seeks to codify that effort in the event in the future as people mature and move on to future employment, to make sure that they are continuing to do this work when the next leadership team comes in the long-term future, not the near. Lastly, it requires some reporting as it pertains to those demographic data. The last thing I want to also say is that Senate Bill 358, its cross-file, did pass the Senate this morning, 46-0. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mindy Lehman. I'm the Chief Government Relations and Policy Officer for TEDCO. And I'm pleased to be here testifying in support of Delegate Young's legislation. We spoke to the delegate and as well as Senator McCray, the cross-file sponsor on the legislation. We support the bill. We recognize how important this work is. It is very important to TEDCO's board as well as our CEO. And as the delegate described very well, TEDCO is already collecting this information across our investment programs and publishing it on our website. That said, this does codify this existing best practice, which we think is a positive thing. We recognize that we can and will do more in this area. And if I could, just some numbers to help provide some perspective on TEDCO's work. In fiscal 23, we received about 300 applications across our investment programs. And that includes our pre-seed, our seed, and our venture capital investment programs. Of those applications, about half came from a person of color, a female, or someone from a rural area. Now, when it came to awarding the investments, we awarded 70% of those investments to a person of color, a female, or someone from a rural area. And just to contrast that with the national average for all venture capital is 0.3% to a person of color or a female. So we're proud of the work that TEDCO is doing, but we do recognize it's important to codify this in statute and to continue to hold TEDCO accountable for this important work. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 753. House Bill 776, Delegate Feldmark. And I was going to say, did you just want to stay right there?
If it pleases the chairwoman, yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and committee members. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark, here to present House Bill 776 and continue with the TEDCO Hour. So in the theme of simple bills, this one I think we can call codifying common sense. In fact, when our friends at TEDCO reached out to request this bill, I was surprised that it was needed, but according to their attorneys, explicit authority would help quite a bit here. So here we go. It's pretty straightforward. So as you know, TEDCO's mission is to help grow strong, successful Maryland-based technology companies. And to do that, they invest financially, but another important way that they can help companies, especially new companies, getting established is with administrative support and back office services. But those are services that a new company should pay for, right? They can help them manage it more efficiently, but they should be able to get compensation for those services. As I said, it seems pretty straightforward to me, but to be able to charge and be compensated for those services, they need the explicit legal authority, and this bill would provide that. So with that, I will ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. For the record, again, I'm Mindy Lehman with TEDCO. And pleased to be here and really want to thank the delegate for her leadership and support of this legislation. We did request the legislation be initiated, and the fiscal note does a really good job of describing what the bill does. And it does clarify in statute, under current statute, TEDCO can create, for example, a nonprofit, but it is silent on whether when TEDCO provides those back office support services such as marketing or reporting, that we can both provide it, but then in turn be compensated for it. So this from a practical perspective, this popped up when we launched our pilot program, our Women Entrepreneurs of Excellence in collaboration with Maryland's 4 HBCUs. Montgomery County, Howard County, and private companies. And during that pilot, we formed a small nonprofit just to facilitate the management and implementation of that nonprofit. And while we were doing that, our legal counsel, who is from the Maryland Attorney General, is TEDCO's legal counsel, just like other state agencies. They recommended that we get clarification in statute that if we're providing those back office support, such as marketing, reporting, accounting, that we get clarification in statute that we can indeed do that. And that's what this bill does.
Okay, questions, Delegate Fair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that answered my question. I'm trying to this seems very legalese kind of in the language. So I think for the benefit of all of us, can you give me a really solid example of how this is beneficial?
Sure. And just to build on the example that I briefly described, when we were TEDCO, as we expand our programs and services to meet emerging needs in the ecosystem, one of the things we can do is launch small pilot programs to see how that better meets the evolving needs of the ecosystem. And our Institute of Women Entrepreneurs of Excellence, which is led by retired General Linda Singh, as we were doing that, we were working with stakeholders across the community, including the 4 HBCUs. The pilot counties that we were working with included Montgomery, Howard, and then we also had some private industry that was really interested in working with TEDCO to see how this would play out. We formed a small 501c3 to facilitate those different entities working together, and for retired General Linda Singh, who has a consulting company, to more effectively manage and implement that particular program. And when over the course of doing it, RAG said, hey, you know, statute's silent. Like, it's very clear that you can create the nonprofit. It's very clear that you can do this, but it's silent on if you're providing those back office support, which we did. We marketed the program, we provided the reporting, just that we could in turn be compensated if, you know, if we should need to be compensated for it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for this service, how much revenue do you expect to generate?
Really minimal impact. You know, it's a little hard to determine because we are, as we creating nonprofits is not something we've done a lot to date, and we would really do that around the emerging needs of the market. But for example, one of the things that we've looked at within the scope of legislation which passed last year, thank you, for the Equitech Growth Fund and Commission, is we really recognize that the growing needs in this area are going to require additional financial support beyond what the state can contribute. And along those lines, it's the intention of TEDCO to be able to, at some point in time, raise private and philanthropic dollars in order to support those types of needs. And having that ability to form a nonprofit to facilitate that in terms of fundraising would be helpful. And then this could come into play then. So we thought it was important to get the clarification moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 776. House Bill 646, Delegate Simmons. And you have on your panel Patricia Brennan and Stanley. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, my distinguished colleagues, Gary Simmons, Anne Arundel County District 12B. For the record, I have provided my statement on record, but I will give a brief overview of the witnesses that's here today. We're here on.
Is this your first time in Ways and Means?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So we're here on House Bill 646. Dealing with something that y'all have heard a lot of testimony on today, dealing with our volunteer forces. And obviously, this is very important and critical to how we maintain our state with volunteers, with meeting the needs of our communities. Here today, we're talking about the needs for a tax break involving our volunteer reserve officers, law enforcement officers, as well as volunteer fire and rescue. So today, without further ado, one of the things I wanted to do was introduce the panel. But before I do that, I will tell you, over my lifetime of serving in law enforcement, active duty law enforcement, I've had the opportunity to volunteer myself. I volunteer currently with the American Red Cross as part of their disaster action team and their life safety and asset protection. These jobs are part of our way of giving back to the community. I also currently volunteer with the CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team, which I've been doing here in Anne Arundel County. And these people that will respond to emergency throughout the city and the state whenever called upon. So we need to do more to look at how we can mitigate breaks for them on the tax bracket. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our distinguished panel.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Stanley Samarizek. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Natural Resources Police Reserve Officers Association. I serve for the board and I've been a reserve officer for 17 years. As earlier commentators have noted, this is a very simple statute. The current statute is bifurcated. One part deals with volunteer firefighters, EMTs, medical service providers. Another part of the statute deals with police auxiliary, police reserve. Same statute, two different provisions. Historically, the provisions have not been dealt with equally in the legislature. For example, in 2018, the volunteer firefighters, EMTs, and emergency service members got a boost to $7,000 starting in tax year 2022. We did not. We are still at $5,000. The statute is common sense. It takes all of us and puts us into a single category of public service volunteers so that going forward, there will be guaranteed parity and we won't have to be dealing with two different pieces of the statute. My department currently has 153 active natural resources police reserve officers. In calendar year 2023, we worked 16,290 hours to protect the public and preserve the state's natural resources. We provided search and rescue, law enforcement assistance, patrol in state parks and elsewhere, traffic control, rapture, capture, and transport, vessel safety checks, boater safety courses, hunter safety courses, sponsoring fishing, and others. Based on DNR figures, the cost of having these services provided by first-year regular officers would be $766,000. That does not include the cost of their training, their vehicles, the boats. That's just for salaries.
Sir,
So-
can you wrap up?
Yes.
Can you wrap up your
So,
testimony? Thank
again,
you.
we welcome your support and ask that you simply put all of us public safety volunteers on parity. Any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee members. My name is Patricia Brennan. I am currently an Anne Arundel County Reserve Police Officer. I'm here today to advocate for all volunteer reserve auxiliary officers standing be in parity with the current status of volunteer fire, rescue, emergency medical services currently listed in House Bill 646. It's undeniable when you look at the cost value analysis that volunteer reserve auxiliary officers saved the state and the county just last year alone $496,309.52, providing a huge savings to the overall budget. The tax deduction is of major importance to the recruitment and retention of individuals in our organization. During the last 2 years, Anne Arundel County Reserve officers have participated in 28,111 hours of service that covered 221 events throughout the county. At current, there are 38 active reserve officers with 22 vacancies. In this capacity, the Reserve Officer Program allows full-time, regular paid Anne Arundel County Police Force to be actively engaged in serving and protecting the public. Reserve officers support the police force in many areas such as traffic control, weather, emergency callouts, and unforeseen devastating tragedies. Reserve officers also respond to local requests in support of community relations functions, events for over 40 years. The application process to become a reserve officer is an in-depth process. after successfully completing the application process and required training as a reserve officer, has to complete a minimum of 192 hours of service each year, with many reserve officers exceeding this minimum requirement. At this time, being a reserve officer is both stressful and physically demanding. We are advocating that reserve officer, auxiliary officers organization be given the same respect, benefits, and status of the volunteer fire rescue emergency medical service listed in current House Bill 646. Let me end with, reserve officers want to be involved in supporting the community to make a difference. Thank you for your time and support for updating this bill. I just want to say one thing, as of all fire lists, I've just announced and put a stand saying that we've saved the county money.
Thank you. Stanley, could you pronounce your last name for me?
Yes, it's pronounced like the two first names, Sam or Isaac.
Oh,
Thank you for asking, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So it looks like we have quite a few questions for you here today. So, you know, for your first bill, I think everybody else, there were so many questions, their lights we can't light them all up. Does anybody have an actual question? Okay, I don't think so. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 646. Delegate Adams, House Bill 828. You have one individual who has signed up virtually, and then John Dove. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. For the record, Delegate Chris Adams, happy to present House Bill 828. Committee members, I've had 4 bills so far this year, and I think they're all in this committee. I've not had one in my home committee yet. So the bill is related to abandoned cemetery fund establishment and income tax checkoff. This is a departmental bill, request of the department. And let me just give you a brief background that's personal about the Eastern Shore. You know, on the Eastern Shore, we have a lot of abandoned cemeteries. I've had one experience in Dorchester County, Hooper's Island, where a cemetery was really close to the water line where we have erosion. And I saw firsthand, for reasons other than seeing the cemetery, but I saw erosion along Hooper's Island, and you could see some of these cemeteries and casks were literally at the edge of this erosion. And the reason why I bring that to you is because when the department asked me to bring the bill, the subject resonated with me, because I think when you have abandoned cemeteries, where's the funding come from? Who fixes them? And normally these are citizens, you know, who in my estimation are volunteers, people that want to do good. And then some of these cemeteries are in very bad shape. So I respect the department's request for this, and I'll let the department discuss the bill in detail, but I do support and endorse this piece of legislation, and would ask for your favorable report.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is John Dove. I'm the Commissioner of Occupational and Professional Licensing at the Maryland Department of Labor. Online with me, if you can bring her up, is Debbie Rapazzo, who should be on virtually. She's the Executive Director of the Office of Cemetery Oversight. She'll be here to help me answer any questions that you may have. I'd like to thank Chair Atterbury and the Ways and Means Committee members for allowing me to introduce you to HB 828, entitled Office of Cemetery Oversight, Abandoned Cemetery Fund. I'd like to explain why the passing of this bill would benefit all the citizens of Maryland. This bill will create a fund to restore and maintain cemeteries that for any number of reasons have fallen into disrepair. The Department of Labor will oversee the fund and the upkeep of cemeteries that have deteriorated due to abandonment and neglect. Taxpayers will be able to make donations to the fund through their state income taxes through a prompt asking for a $1 donation. Those donations would be placed in the Abandoned Cemetery Fund. These donations will then be used to administer the fund and pay for the maintenance of the abandoned cemeteries. This bill will continue to enhance the partnership between the Office of Cemetery and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services by utilizing teams of incarcerated persons to perform horticulture, restoration activities, providing skills and training for employment for inmates, as well as allowing the OCO to create new partnerships with small business and other death care organizations around our state. By passing HB 828, Office of Cemetery Oversight, Abandoned Cemetery Fund, residents of Maryland, past and current, will be reassured that many abandoned cemeteries will be cared for and the individuals buried there will finally be treated with respect. Thank you for your time, and we ask the committee for a favorable report.
I was just going to add, Madam Chair, I've been working and talking with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank them for having a discussion with me and have heard their opinion and information. So wanted to add that to the testimony.
Thank you. And is Ms. Raposo testifying or she's just for questions?
She's just here for questions, Ms.
Okay.
Rapazzo.
Raposo, thank you. I apologize. Are there any questions from the committee? Louisa, can you bring her up, please? Oh, she's coming in. We do have a couple questions. So while she's coming in, Delegate Wims.
We usually get those from delegates, legislators. We have people call in and start telling us about some cemetery that's in disrepair. We'll do the research, try to find out who actually is responsible. If we can tie them to somebody that actually owns the cemetery, we'll try to work it out and get them to take care of the cemetery. If not, would like to have this fund available. Most times the actual responsibility ends up falling back to the county. They end up having to take care of it and figure out how to get it in repair, but we want to be able to help out where we can.
Delegate Grossman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill forward. I just have a quick question because I have a similar bill. What was just, you mentioned often there are groups of volunteers or others who are wanting to upkeep these properties or who come to love them or want to maintain them. And I appreciate the opportunity for incarcerated individuals to engage in that process as well. But under this fund, will there still be opportunity for those groups to help to maintain and keep those historic properties intact?
This bill will only help when we need the funds to actually pay somebody to take care of the cemetery. So we'd love to have volunteers go take care of cemeteries. And people in my church do the same thing. They go around and help upkeep some of the old cemeteries. So that would not hinder that in any way at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I think this is generally a good idea and appreciate the effort to fund it through the income tax checkoff. I just have a question because of the mention of prison labor and inmate labor. I wanted to get a better sense. Of course, with this fund, there's going to be a limited amount of dollars. I know we've done a lot of work in this legislature around fair wages for incarcerated individuals. And so I wanted to get a better sense of what you are thinking. Is it going to be the $1 a day that we oftentimes see in terms of their work on these cemeteries? Or are you thinking that this is going to be more of a fair wage? And also you talked about training, job training. If this is going to be in the cemetery field, or can you just say more about how we are going to be working with our inmates, both around wages and around training them so that they are able to, for those that will be returning citizens, being able to come back and be productive earners?
With regards to wages, whatever the current rate is that is allowed by the state is what we'll be paying out of the fund. I've got it listed as $500 per day is what we have here. I think Ms. Rapazzo might be able to answer that a little bit more clearly. I'll give her a shot at that. As far as the other piece around training, we've tried to set up programs that actually enable the inmates to learn how to take care of headstones, do things like that in conjunction with workforce development. We're still in process. We had a pilot on that. We're going to try to bring some of that back so we actually transfer some skills to those that are doing this. And that way, once they get released, they will actually have a career path they can go forward with.
Okay, and just to clarify, your five, and we'll let her respond, just to clarify, because we definitely don't pay individual inmates $500 a
Right.
day. You would say in total, that's
In
what's
total,
allocated.
that's the way I understand it. So.
Okay, thank you. If your other person's able to answer.
Okay, if Miss Rapazzo.
Rapazzo, yes.
Rapazzo. I think she needs to unmute and show herself.
And if I could, I'm gonna, while she's being brought up, basically the information I have is that it's for up to 6 incarcerated individuals is what I have written here, but we're gonna abide by whatever the state tells us we have to abide by with regards to payment. So I can't give you a number on exactly what we're gonna pay. We're gonna go by whatever the DPSCS says we have to pay for those individuals that come in and do it.
Okay, thank you. Well, Delegate, if we move this forward into the committee, I'd definitely like to follow up around the training and the wages, if we're going to be utilizing, inmate labor in this new way. So thank you.
Okay,
There you go.
there we go.
Hand up.
Okay, I keep mispronouncing your name, so I'm just gonna
Debbie.
say Debbie. If you could turn your camera on, that would be good. We do request that cameras be on, and you need to unmute yourself. And while she is figuring that out, I would like to ask, so your written testimony says that you would like a $1 donation, but that's not in the bill. It's not in the actual legislation. It said, the legislation says the amount designated by the individual, the checkoff. So would you like it to be $1? Or do you want it to be open-ended?
We would like it to be a minimum of $1.
Okay,
And then they can designate more if they would like to.
okay, thank you. Okay, Desi, welcome. You look great. Glad we can
Hi,
see.
thank you. I'm so sorry. Having a little bit of difficulty here. I didn't know there was an okay button to push that had to be pushed. But thank you so much, Chair and Atterbury and all of the Ways and Means Committee members for hearing this bill HB 828 and giving consideration, positive consideration. There was a question about training. We have done some pilot work and training as Commissioner Dove has presented to the committee with training inmates. It was a 6-week program. And then 2 weeks would have been out on site. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to the 2 weeks out on site, but we definitely did the 6 weeks learning. They were learning all about cemetery world, how they could function in that world and learn how to restore old monuments, set new monuments, maintenance, the type of grass down to, how you talk to people and how just to interact and to be able to operate in a cemetery. The whole program was not only to do that, but also then to create these teams of individuals to go out, do what they have learned, apply out into the field, what they have learned to do some maintenance work, restoration work at cemeteries. And then the final step after that would be completed, and they were 1 to 5 years out. And once they were getting ready to be released, they would be introduced to our registered cemetery licensees that we have that we're looking for some employment opportunities for individuals. So it's going to be a full circle. Unfortunately, we have not created the second class on that. This would be something that this bill would help to do. And with the help of all Marylanders, we would then be able to take care of several things. Our abandoned cemeteries that are such eyesores and so disrespectful for our Marylanders and the ones that, coming to visit through our state to see that we have neglected to take care of a lot of these graves. It could be as little as 2 graves, 1 grave, but many graves. And then just to wrap it up, we do work currently with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services with the inmates. They do take care of paying these individuals, but it would be through funds that were, like an MOU, a memorandum of understanding of a daily rate that they're considered.
Thank you. Any questions, Delegate Patterson?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Adams, for bringing this legislation to us. I'm interested in the abandonment. In my community, there are churches, old, small churches that have abandoned cemeteries. Would they be considered eligible for this kind? Well, not they, but the area be considered eligible for this kind of support?
You want to answer that, Debbie?
Oh, I definitely will. So there are some reasons why what we would consider a bona fide religious cemetery that is still in existence. There may not be a congregation associated with them. It could be that that congregation or even that religious group has disbanded and the property then becomes abandoned. That's one of the reasons. Another one would be that, these cemeteries date back to the 1700s, 1800s. And it could be that some of the religious entities don't even realize that they even own these cemeteries. So as we go through land records and we try to match up and, you know, to get some ownership, it's not as easy as it would, but, you know, as just saying it, it's really difficult. But sometimes the break in what is in land records and what they have, or it said one thing and they say something else, it's very difficult to prove ownership. So we try to work with that, and then we would consider that abandoned cemetery. And as we start our marching orders of going forward with putting the parameters around what we need to do, our focus, we will be looking at everything about abandoned cemeteries and what other cemeteries may be able to be considered to utilize this program that we're putting together.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Delegate Adams. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 828. Committee, I would like, before we move on, to recognize the shadows that are here today from the Legislative Black Caucus HBCU Day. If you all could stand up, wave. Thank you for coming to the best committee in the House of Delegates. Delegate Long, House Bill 818. This is a Prince George's County local bill. Is this your first time in front of Ways and Means? Welcome.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and my distinguished colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Jeffrey E. Long Jr. of District 27B, Calvert and Prince George's County. And I am here on a local bill, which you will receive a local letter of support from our delegation very soon, which simply proposes an income tax credit for employers in Prince George's County who allow parents and guardians to volunteer in elementary and secondary schools. It recognizes and incentivizes volunteers and valuable contributions to our educational system. And if I can just go off script, you already have my written testimony. It will help us in our county to address the lack of parental engagement and involvement with youth that sometimes tend to veer off course and go in different directions, which are not favorable. It will allow parents the opportunity through and by their employer to be further engaged. This bill will allow eligible businesses within the county, which allow their employees to volunteer in schools, to claim a credit against the state income tax. The credit amounts to $20 each volunteer hour with a maximum claim of up to $500 per tax year. And also, just if I can add, I'm aware of our current fiscal state. So I have an amendment that's been drafted, which would just simply make this enabling legislation. And I will ensure that you all receive a copy of that as well, too. And with that, Madam Chair, I will yield for any questions.
Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only pushed my button because I saw him on the way in and he said no questions, please.
Delegate Muir-Q North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a great bill. I'm curious as to why it's not like a statewide bill, because I think that's a problem like statewide, no?
Stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 818, but you are still with us for House Bill 717.
Yes, again, thank you, Madam Chair.
Literally stay tuned.
Thank you. For the record, I am Delegate Jeffrey E. Long Jr. of Calvert and Prince George's County, District 27B. And so what this is, it's also a cross-file with Senator Joanne C. Benson's bill. And just to give you the premise and the foundation, it's a brainchild of one of our school board members from Prince George's County, School Board Member Brand Jackson, who unfortunately could not be here today. But this bill does exactly the same thing that the previous bill you just heard, HB 818. However, it's an amendment that I have drafted would set a cap of $1 million, and the program would be administered through the State Department of Education. But initially what it would do is it would allow employers an incentive to apply for a tax credit if they allow their employees parental engagement leave. Again, there's a cap of $1 million that we've set, just given the current fiscal outlook of our state. And it would be great as a pilot program in the interim. Thank you.
Any questions for Delegate Long? Delegate Young?
Hey, brother. No, my question is, given that you're shrinking it to $1 million, I thought I just looked on the fiscal note, but I skimmed it. So clarify if I'm wrong. It is 800, up to 800 per person. Is that what I saw?
The amendment, just so I can make sure I'm clear, if I don't have the accurate answer, I will get back with you offline. But the amendment, I believe, will address and allow them to now do up to, the credit is less than $500. So not 800, but 500.
Okay. Yeah. So you adjusted per person credit with it. That's one question.
Correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 719. House Bill 692. I do not see Delegate Chi. And I do
Madam
not see. Oh, you do have another one.
Yep.
So that concludes the hearing on House Bill 717, House Bill 719.
Thank you again. 3 in a row, Madam Chair. For the record, again, I'm Delegate Jeffrey Elong Jr. here for HB 719, which is an income tax credit for parent and guardian volunteers in elementary and secondary schools. And just so that I can further lay the groundwork, just in the same spirit as the two previous aforementioned bills, HB 719 would propose an income tax credit for parents and guardians who volunteer their time in elementary and secondary schools. This bill recognizes the invaluable contribution of volunteers to our schools' educational missions and seeks to encourage more parents and guardians to engage directly in their children's education. Again, this is cross-follow Senator Joanne C. Benson as well, the brainchild of one of our great school board members. And it's a statewide bill. And just as the aforementioned bill, we've set a cap of $1 million, which would allow eligible individuals after they have had the State Department administer their certificate would be eligible for this tax credit as well too. And again, given that current fiscal outlook, I think that the $1 million threshold would allow us to see how it operates as a pilot. With that, I do ask this committee to urge a favorable report on HB 719, and I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 719. And I know that Delegate Harris is on his way, so we will just have to pause because I don't see Delegate Chi either. Delegate Harris, calling House Bill 685. And who would you like to bring up with you?
The panel's coming up now.
Delegate Harris, this is your first bill in Ways and Means?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Welcome. You get
Thanks.
special treatment since you showed all the ladies love on Valentine's Day.
Shh, don't tell nobody else. Well, great afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the awesome members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate Kevin M. Harris, representing Legislative District 27A, which covers Charles and Prince George's County. Today, I will be presenting House Bill 685 with the two panelists, Georgia from Maryland Aerospace Alliance, and Bill Chambers from the president of the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce. Maryland has been a jewel in the federal funded aerospace portfolio. Maryland boasts the presence of 15 of the top 20 aerospace and defense companies with over 9,600 aerospace-related businesses and 142,000 aerospace jobs, bringing the state of Maryland $1 billion in tax base. Maryland is an aerospace state. We have the most aerospace engineers in the country, and we have the most earth scientists in the world. From Aberdeen and the Eastern Shores to Baltimore City to the I-270 corridor, there are aerospace companies, and most importantly, their employees and families living and working in Maryland. Yet, we are at risk of losing so much of this picture due to major reduction of the federal budget. When federal funding diminishes, the cutting edge, exciting work of NASA Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, NOAA in Silver Spring, Johns Hopkins in Laboratory in Laurel, and the Naval Air Station in Pax River loses jobs. Job loss leads to the talented workforce leaving to go to other aerospace states like Florida, Texas, and California. Without the jobs, the early career professionals coming out of Maryland schools like the University of Maryland or Morgan State University will find jobs in other states, draining our workforce. The establishment of the Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission and Fund reflects a commitment to sustaining the aerospace ecosystem that already exists and fostering innovation, growth, and opportunities within the aerospace sector, including commercial aerospace. It will not only benefit the state economy, but also provide Marylanders with access to diverse and rewarding opportunities that the aerospace industry offers. As these incentivized programs, they hold the potential to maintain and further Maryland's leading position within the aerospace industries, showcasing that the state's dedication to technology advancement and economic development. However, despite a $1.5 million fiscal note for the Maryland Aerospace Development, this investment will only result in lost economic growth potential. Full investment in Maryland aerospace sector will result in the full economic growth in this sector. The fiscal note, though, at the minimum, will maintain and or grow our state base, our tax basis. During the first 5 years of the Space Florida program, they averaged over 3 times the return on investment each year. The opportunity for growth through the Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission and Fund are truly astronomical. The future looks bright, and the efforts to highlight and secure Maryland as a robust and growing aerospace state is possible with your vote in favor of House Bill 685. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chairwoman and Vice Chair and the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Georgianne Brophy. I have been in the aerospace industry, living and working in the state of Maryland for close to 35 years. I've worked with NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I've worked with NOAA. I've worked with Johns Hopkins, APL, incredible institutions. I think most importantly, right now, I have a junior in high school in Montgomery County who her dream is to go to the University of Maryland, study aerospace engineering, live and work in Maryland doing data analytics with machine learning and artificial intelligence when she graduates. And my hope is that she has a job waiting for her and ready for her when she graduates. So we have had, Delegate Harris spoke to our rich and robust aerospace industry in the state right now. It is that way because of federal funding. Over the last many years, you've seen the incredible images of the James Webb Space Telescope. You've seen these things that we've done, and it's incredible. And we all know federal funding is limited and it's drying up. And we have this incredible infrastructure that is diverse, vastly diverse. When I look at the workforce just at Goddard Space Flight Center, we have about 35% minority workforce. I'd like to share also when it comes to education, we do about 750 or so internships every summer from high school, undergraduate, graduate programs. 200 some are from the state of Maryland, those students, 30 of which have been from minority serving institutions. So we have these incredible things we're doing, but with federal funding going away, we'll be limited to having those experiences. And what we need and are asking the state to do with the creation of this commission is to provide basically, I apologize, an advisory group, the commission, that could also provide investment into key critical areas that will bring in commercial stimulation so that our aerospace ecosystem is self-sustaining over time and not just dependent on federal funds. So that I'm hoping that you will vote favorably for the House Bill 685 and very grateful for your time today. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. My name is Charles Ichoko. I am a professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, and I'm the director of the NASA-sponsored Goddard Earth Sciences Technology and Research Center, GESTA 2, a multi-institutional cooperative institute located at UMBC. I'm here to testify in favor with amendments, House Bill number 685. I have been a resident of this great state of Maryland for more than a quarter century. Maryland is also home to the largest NASA center and NOAA headquarters and multiple top aerospace research related institutions here in the area. Therefore, it is an excellent initiative to establish a Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission. UMBC is one of the top research institutions, R1 institution in the nation, and it is the only one of that caliber of institutions in Baltimore region, and even Northern Maryland. So UMBC is a leader in aerospace and technology and research. And recently, last week, we launched, NASA launched a satellite to space, Earth observing satellite. And UMBC contributed a very innovative instrument in that system. And many of our scientists work at NASA Goddard. More than 200 scientists from UMBC work at NASA Goddard, participating in many aerospace-related endeavors. So I'm delighted to support this bill and the Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission, and strongly believe that UMBC has a role in it. So thank you again for the opportunity to testify to this committee. I urge you to support this bill with amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Harris, can I have Mr. Variano come up and testify?
Absolutely. And I think the other panelist, Bill Chambers, he's actually he's virtual, not physically here.
Yep.
So that's
We have two folks virtually. And then after we do them, we'll do questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the House Ways and Means Committee and Madam Vice Chair. Don't forget the mother county. I represent St. Mary's County, and I've spoken to the sponsor both in the House and Senate side, and we would just like to be included in this bill. Let me tell you about Pax River. It is the Navy's busiest flight center in the entire world. It hosts the Naval Air Systems Command and the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division. It's the third highest economic output in the state of Maryland, with 17 military installations, produces over $6.5 billion in the economy of the state of Maryland, third largest workforce as well. And it represents about 75% of the economy of St. Mary's County. So we would just like to be included. I've drafted up some amendments, which I will get to the committee and share with, we're so happy that Delegate Harris has put this bill in. And I love Prince George's County. I think the other facilities are very critical and very important, but I would like the mother county to be included, please. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. If we could have William Chambers join us virtually.
Thank you, Bill. There we go.
Go ahead,
Good
Jeff.
afternoon. Yep, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Wilkins, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Bill Chambers, President, CEO of the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce. We represent more than 700 businesses and organizations on Maryland's Eastern Shore, and we request a favorable report on House Bill 685. The aerospace industry is responsible for the production of advanced technologies and equipment that are essential for national security and the global economy. The industry is responsible for designing and manufacturing everything from fighter jets, reconnaissance drones, spacecraft, and civilian aviation. This industry is growing in Maryland and nationally generates billions in revenues and employs millions of people. The creation of a Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission would assist in capitalizing on the aerospace industry and complementary industries by promoting innovation statewide in the fields of space exploration, commercial aerospace opportunities, and complementary industries, including electronics, software development, advanced manufacturing, all sectors that we want to see grow in Maryland. And as a testament to that and those opportunities, let's look at the current revenue streams and the new revenue streams coming out of a facility that's just a stone's throw from our border, and that is NASA Wallops Island. Not only does the U.S. Navy have a presence there, Rocket Lab has a presence and is starting multitude of private commercial launches. Virginia Space has a facility and a launch facility there. The Department of Defense has multiple contractors and private sector contractors involved currently on base, and that facility is expanding. Just NASA Wallops alone employs more than 2,000 people. More than half of them live in our state. So there's an opportunity to continue to capitalize on that activity that is currently taking place. We urge a favorable report on House Bill 685.
Thank you. And it is my understanding Tom Garrison signed up, but he is not with us virtually. So we'll go to questions. Delegate Buckle, then Delegate Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question for my friend, the delegate. So I read the fiscal note. You're not proposing or mandating that any specific amount of money gets paid. They're kind of estimating that it'll be $5 million a year. You're not suggesting that, are you? I mean, you're saying, look, I want there to be this commission and this opportunity for the economic development and the growth, and we'll get funding as it becomes available and from a variety of sources. It's not a $5 million mandate.
Absolutely correct. And you see that in the fiscal note that we are not mandating that the governor put this in his budget. We're just saying this is what the estimate will be, but no, that's not a mandate.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Delegate Harris, for this legislation. And certainly, Ms. Bariano, thank you for thinking about Southern Maryland. You're absolutely correct. I have a question. I found this very intriguing, and in fact, I met with some representatives regarding this bill earlier this week, and I told them I would pose this question. And that is, when we're thinking about inclusion and lack of diversity, I note that with the members of the commission, there's nothing that really reflects HBCUs or community colleges or representation from NASB. Was that a consideration, or could that be a consideration as you move forward?
Oh, absolutely. With Morgan State being one of those schools that produces a lot of aerospace scientists, we can actually add them to the commission as well. I mean, that is vital.
Had you thought of having a representative from the NASB group? It's my bias, my feeling that when we have boards and commissions, it's really imperative to have those who are directly impacted, and that those are young people or persons in either graduate school or undergraduate school. It's just a consideration, but I think it makes a proposal, any kind of commission, stronger.
I agree with you 100%. Anything that makes it stronger, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 685. Our final hearing, Delegate Chi, House Bill 692. And committee, please welcome from ENT Delegates Lehman, Long, and Naraki that are seated behind me.
Madam Chair, could I call upon my panel? Okay. I would like to ask Lara Fritz, Mr. Tom Cole, if you don't mind joining me, Mr. Wes McCrelliam from Anne Arundel, and Mr. Bill. Here you are. Great. All right. This must be an important bill because we have two committees here. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being flexible. I know it's a heavy day. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and great colleagues of the Ways and Means Committee. Hello again. Today is the Economic Development Day in the state of Maryland, so I'm excited that I'm here to present HB 692, a bill that would spur economic growth and the community revitalization. All across Maryland, counties and municipalities are in dire need of expanding their tax base, especially the commercial tax base, so we don't have to put extra burdens on existing residents and businesses. Whether it's communities where residential growth has far exceeded commercial growth, and where local governments are now scrambling to meet the growing needs of the schools and public amenities, or communities that have been left behind for too long and now are in need of reinvestments so that they could have an anchor grocery store, a more affordable housing. This bill would give local counties and municipalities new tools in their toolbox so they can be more intentional and active partners. Specifically, the bill does two things. The first is to expand the power of a local economic development authority. Currently, the Maryland Economic Development Revenue Bond Act allows a local county or municipality to establish a quasi-government economic development authority to enable industrial and commercial growth, but their authorities are quite limited. They can receive funds from local government or nonprofits, charging fee for services and using the services of other government units. This bill would grant it greater authority to enter into partnerships for development, issue bonds, and invest in infrastructure improvements that are essential for attracting new development or redevelopment. This bill will also expand the use of tax increment financing proceeds. Maryland currently allows local governments to issue bonds backed by the projected growth in property tax revenues as a result of that development, hence the term tax increment. It's projected incremental growth. And you use that projection to invest in development projects or redevelopment projects. This bill expands the allowed uses of such bond proceeds and the tax increment funds to include infrastructure improvements, issuing loans, and financing development costs for affordable housing and public amenities, such as parking structures, lighting fixtures, sidewalks, rec facilities, etc. Many communities across our state are now struggling with underdeveloped parcels and neighborhoods. Projects are becoming more complex and expensive. In fact, development partners and investors are increasingly looking to local governments as partners to help with the gap funding and needing the assurance from these public sector partners through their active engagement and investments. And the redevelopment projects often require infrastructure improvements for project readiness. So for all these reasons, counties and municipalities are in need of new tools to invest in vibrant communities that create a sense of place and a sense of community while generating new commercial tax revenues. In fact, many communities have their own very ambitious visions and plans to make their communities more attractive and competitive with their own blueprint for future growth, such as HOCO, which is Howard County by design, Thrive Montgomery 2050, and Livable Frederick, to name a few. But oftentimes they face huge challenges in their ability to finance these projects and turn their vision into realities. This bill would enable them to turn their vision and ambitions into realities with mixed-use development, affordable housing, and infrastructure improvements to attract and grow businesses and industries. This is why this legislation has broad support of many local communities across Maryland, including Montgomery County, Frederick County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Charles County, that have all submitted written testimonies, including County Executive Jessica Fitzwater of Frederick County and County Executive Calvin Ball of Howard County, for example. The Maryland Association of Counties is also supporting with a small clarifying amendment, as well as the Maryland Municipal League and the Affordable Housing Coalition. And most importantly, our own state's Department of Housing and Community Development is in strong support of this piece of legislation. I want to call your attention to the amendment that I just mentioned, which would give local government's legislative body, which means either a county council or city council, the power for audits and oversight of these authorities. Finally, I want to reiterate the point I made at the beginning, that the best way to grow our revenue is to grow the commercial tax base through strategic investments and partnerships. 20 years ago, I was part of Washington, D.C.'s economic development team and experienced the most remarkable transformation of a capital city in the short span of just a decade. Neighborhood after neighborhood came alive, and residents and businesses moved back into the city that at one point was dismissed as the murder capital of the country and a donut hole because of the disinvestments and the rise of the suburbs. Through proactive and intentional partnerships and investments and the smart use of economic development tools such as TIP financing, tax increment financing, DC turned itself around. So we all know currently in Maryland, we are stagnating in our economic growth, which was confirmed by the recent report from Comptroller Brooke Lehman. But progress does not happen by itself. We make it happen, and this bill would enable the local communities to do more with what they have. And with that, thank you. And I want to turn over first to Lara Fritz. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Chief, for your support of this bill. Madam Chairwoman and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee, my name is Laura Fritz, and I serve as the Director of the Frederick County Division of Economic Opportunity. My role is to enhance the commercial tax base and ensure good jobs for our residents. The county has plans underway for revitalization, notably our Draft South Corridors plan. As the economic driver for the county, we lack the tools needed to facilitate implementation of this community-led plan. In my research, I found Maryland counties have limited tools to address complex economic development needs. This bill changes the state's existing IDA code to expand the scope of uses of incremental funds by industrial development authorities and allows Maryland counties to fund redevelopment programs targeting investments to traditionally underinvested communities. I strongly support HB 0692. As a certified economic developer with over 25 years of experience, I bring a wealth of expertise to this endorsement. Over my extensive career, I've witnessed real estate investment projects becoming more complex and developers turning to the public sector to help bridge gaps in project financing. As redevelopment is generally more expensive than greenfield development, developers seek public sector assistance to offset those additional costs. Frederick County needs commercial investment. We are the fastest growing county in the state by fourfold, yet our commercial tax base has decreased over the past 2 years due to the surge in residential growth. This bill helps authorities facilitate commercial development and addresses community goals such as affordable housing, commercial revitalization, and site readiness to accelerate economic growth and respond to market demands. In conclusion, I request the Ways and Means Committee to give HB 0692 a favorable report. With the proposed tools, local governments can revitalize our communities, foster economic growth, and ensure a prosperous future for Maryland. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Wes McQuillam. I'm with the Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation. The Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation requests a favorable report on House Bill 692. AAEDC is a quasi-governmental organization whose mission is to serve as a catalyst for business growth in Anne Arundel County, thereby increasing job opportunities, expanding tax base, improving citizens' quality of life. We offer a host of services to accomplish this, and we are proud to offer them to businesses in all areas of the county. We are also proud that two of our programs, the Arundel Community Reinvestment Fund and the Community Revitalization Tax Credit, support the redevelopment and revitalization of many of our older commercial districts. They do so by incentivizing property owners to reinvest in and improve properties located in the county's 11 commercial revitalization districts, parts of the city of Annapolis, Brooklyn Park, which is a designated enterprise zone. These investments beautify neighborhoods and spur economic activity that benefits local businesses, the economy, and the residents of the surrounding communities. Given AAEDC's direct and active involvement in local revitalization and redevelopment activities, I'm pleased to offer this testimony in support of House Bill 692, which provides an important tool to advance these efforts in underinvested communities. IDAs play a crucial role in fostering economic growth by attracting and retaining businesses and other investments in their jurisdictions. By expanding the uses under the IDA legislation, this bill provides for enhanced economic development, redevelopment, and affordable housing throughout Maryland. House Bill 692 allows local jurisdictions to directly invest in redevelopment efforts and address some of our most pressing challenges, including aging or lacking infrastructure and lacking affordable housing. The authority granted under this bill provides local governments with the tools to better fund, facilitate, grow diverse redevelopment and revitalization efforts that are essential to sustaining and strengthening our communities most in need. AEDC strongly supports House Bill 692 and respectfully requests a favorable report on these important resources to our regional economy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and a special good afternoon to Vice Chair Wilkins. Good to see you again, and to the rest of the committee. I am Bill Tompkins, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and I am here in support of Bill 692, which is incredibly important to help us with economic development expansion. Unless you've been in another state, you have heard the governor say many times that this state is asset rich, but strategy poor. What this bill does, it helps to facilitate a strategy which literally and figuratively releases unused assets, underused assets, and other items that are going to help us build our economy. While we're not as fast growing as Frederick County, we're a big county. We have a $100 billion economy, and whether you're a big economy or a small one, big county, small county, we all need help and support. We need tools to allow the entire state to grow. And we believe that this bill will be one of the tools that will help us in terms of moving at a faster pace, moving away from being a stagnant economy, and to give us additional tools and flexibility to be able to reach out, not just to the public sector, but also the private sector to ensure that there is sustained economic growth. So I ask you to support Bill 692, and I'm happy to be here with my colleagues. You can tell that all of the economic development organizations across the state are strongly in support of this bill and strongly in support of Delegate Lily Chi for bringing this before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Cole on behalf of the Maryland Affordable Housing Coalition. We represent the nonprofits, housing commissions, and developers that are building affordable housing across the state. While the housing crisis is clear and apparent, and we're very excited about the governor's package related to zoning and other matters, we know that the housing crisis is really a funding crisis. Our members will find a dozen plus sources of funding for any given affordable housing project, but it's still not enough, which is why this innovative tool is very exciting for our coalition members. And also to take on affordable housing in this bill is even more exciting because we know that TIFs are often used to fund infrastructure, but we also know that housing is infrastructure. And it's rarely recognized as such. But our coalition members are the ones that are building workforce housing. We're building housing for our healthcare heroes. We're building housing for those that are building our communities. And for this to allow IDAs to build housing and partner with our coalition members in building that housing, that is the essential infrastructure that Maryland needs. And more importantly, this empowers localities to really supercharge their planning decisions. As you just heard, many of our local counties have new general plans, but they don't have the tools to build it themselves. They're passive recipients of what development is proposed. This legislation allows them to be active, proactive, affirmatively build things in accordance with their general plans. And we're very excited that housing is a part of that. So we would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 692. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Jason Williams. I'm the CEO of Mason-Dixon Companies. We are a community development firm based in Baltimore City. We do everything from construction to real estate to financing projects and doing consulting work, which I love. I'm actually very excited to be sitting up here with those that would have been colleagues 10 years ago when I was the Vice President of Economic Development for Prince George's County, utilizing these programs to supercharge projects. You know, as a developer, I feel like I'm a public-private partnership example. We're doing these partnerships throughout Baltimore. We just bought our first project in Frederick, and now we're making these investments, but they wouldn't have been possible without the access to the resources that the government has, but also bringing private sector resources behind it. It's been exciting to see projects start to move forward, but there's often gaps that you have to fulfill. And just to be frank, for minority developers, raising that money is even more difficult. I'm excited this year. We were announced at the end of last year, and we got our first financing as an emerging developer by the state. That financing unlocked about $4 million in investment from the private sector just by the state and the city stepping up. We can do that over and over again. It's projects and bills like this, and thank you, Delegate, for doing this, that make the hugest difference. And we look forward to spreading the good word. If the committee should give this a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. Start with Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the bill sponsor for the bill and to the panel. So I represent the 4U district in Baltimore City, and although not in my district, but still impacting, a few years ago, we had a very large TIF on the table, which was successful, Port Covington. And one of the really big questions that folks had around TIFs and tax abatements, specifically in that case, is the deferred property taxes and the impact it would have on funding for our schools. And so, and I know we have to find creative ways, but I'm wondering if there are any guardrails or if there's any conversation about how we can utilize this tool in a way that, especially as we're still working to fulfill our commitment on the blueprint, how do we ensure that we are protecting the access to those critical funds for education, which we know FY28 we're going to need for our counties and our cities to continue to find ways to fund that. So could you talk a little bit more about if there's been conversation about how we can do that? How do we ensure that if we do pass this legislation, that we're not seeing runaway TIFs that are going to have a detrimental impact on us fulfilling our commitment to the blueprint?
Thank you, Delegate, for the excellent question. So local jurisdictions rely heavily on property taxes to fund their local education. And these authorities that this bill will the current Maryland law already allows these industrial development authority to exist, but this bill expands the scope and the function so that they can use tax increment financing more liberally to do a lot of development projects. But local jurisdictions, whether it's county council or city council, still has the oversight over that, and they can decide a portion of that goes back to the taxing district to support the larger community's needs, not just to cover the costs and support that particular parcel's development.
Okay, so
Yeah,
basically
they could be different.
So I think
from county to county.
Okay, I just want to be clear. So basically, there's nothing in the legislation that would actually provide kind of any guidance. It's all.
Yeah, we don't
left
have
up-
formula here to say
Okay.
you have to, use up this portion for this, that. It's up to the county councils or city councils to decide.
Okay.
This is simply an enabling piece of legislation.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I just wanted to kind of bring that to light because that
Sure.
is going to be like in terms of the impact.
Yeah.
And so just wanting to think about what we can do without being too overbearing at this date.
Right.
But I think that we should still be considering that this could have a negative impact on all of our ability to meet the goals of,
Yes.
of the blueprint. Thank you.
Yeah.
Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for bringing the bill forward. Just a couple, just a simple set of questions here. The bill is pretty expansive and it's pretty awesome. I mean, just in its scope of what it's trying to do here, but in it outlines that that county, this new authority from the county or the city can own, hold, and improve real and personal property. So basically it has the ability to purchase property that it then holds. And is the county then, or the city, the municipality, do they become the property owner of that space?
Yes, and I will defer to my economic development panel to answer that for their own counties.
Yeah.
So Delegate Fair, thank you for the question. It's always good to see Frederick County.
Pleasure.
This bill does authorize the authority to own, hold, and improve real and personal property. Private developers should not see this as a competitor, but rather they should see it as a complement to their work. For example, the authority could assemble property, demo, grade the site, get it site ready for a development to occur, issue an RFP to enter into a partnership with the private sector to be able to bring that new growth onto the tax rolls.
Wonderful. And so my only follow-up question to that is, there is always concern about when we're doing things like this with in the public, that we are making sure that we are giving the public the opportunity to engage in this process. Is there a component of the bill, or is it already pre-built that there will be public hearings about any of these properties that the municipality or the county may or may not purchase?
Well, these are created by government and they act on behalf of government. They're subject to local government laws and rules about open meetings. Yeah.
But just to be clear, like the process, am I incorrect that this is acting under the position of the county executive or the mayor? It would act under the executive branch of government, not under but it has no oversight from the county council?
Yeah,
or
that's
board?
an interesting question because it can change from county to county. For example, during my time of servicing Montgomery County, we changed overnight from share the responsibility between executive and legislative branch for oversight over planning and zoning to just now one branch with that exclusive authority, which is the county council, right? So depending on your local county's dynamic, it could be, county executive appointing the board and the county council confirming, or could be just the county council.
Gotcha. So it inherently enables the county to have that flexibility.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you so much for the.
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. And I was trying to read it on my phone, so I wasn't being rude. I was sitting back.
It's a
here
long
trying
one.
to read
It's a very
small
long one.
screen, which is challenging. So two questions. The first one, the main question is about whether you could describe the bonding authority provisions in the bill a little bit further. Specifically, the question is around the city or the county extending or sharing its authority, it sounds like, with a revenue or redevelopment authority, and whether there's the potential for a local government's bond rating to be affected if it's sharing its authority with a body that never had this power before.
Thank you. That's another excellent question. The current code already allows certain leverage related to bonds, but this simply expands that. And I'm going to defer to my panel to answer that question in more detail.
The gentleman.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate, for the question. So likely there would be a higher cost of capital by issuing a bond, but the trade-off is the risk avoidance by the local government. Under the structure, basically the authority is paying bondholders to bear the risk of not having the county back the bonds. So it means that if the county doesn't have to put this debt on their books, it doesn't have to maintain, this allows them to maintain their bond rating and capacity for other projects outside of what would be the project area that would collect this increment and pay back a bond. Now, one thing that this bill also does is it doesn't require that the authority issue a bond. It can collect money into funds, wait for the fund to grow, and then deploy it into a project.
Okay, well, is there any obvious downside in terms of risk? Is an emphasis going to be on like really reviewing on a project by project basis? For these newly empowered, I guess, various types of authorities.
So the process would be the county council would have to establish an authority. Then it would have to determine a project area. That project area would then have a project area plan that clearly defines the boundary, how much increment potentially will be created, and how those funds will be expended. At that point, the authority with their board looks project by project at the investments that they'll make, but they have to align with what the county council has provided as sort of the parameters.
Okay, Madam Chair, one other quick question, which is just in the beginning, it describes this legislation as extending to revenue redevelopment or quote, other similar authorities. What is that term meant to capture? Are there other, authorities out there that just go by different names, or you're imagining a whole brand new class sort of these types of bodies?
No, they will essentially act in the same ways, it's just that some counties have different names for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Feldmark, then Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for the bill and for bringing your all-star panel to us. I want to make sure I understand. As I listen to the testimony, it seems like we're sort of combining the industrial development authorities, revenue authorities, urban renewal provisions, and existing TIF provisions, and kind of pulling them all together for maximum flexibility is what it sounded like to me. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
That spirit, yes.
Okay. And so, which I understand and appreciate, and I think is a good idea. My questions, I think, similar to Delegate Lehman's are, the bonds, are these only TIF bonds? Or can they issue, because the language in the statute says issue bonds, but I'm honestly not tracking what section we're in right now. So I don't know if that refers specifically only to TIF bonds, or could they be general obligation bonds? Could they be revenue bonds? Like what's the scope of the authority?
So for example, in Montgomery County right now, we don't do TIF. So this bill would empower and enable Montgomery County to actually explore the possibility of using tax increment financing for very invested communities, right? So this is definitely an enabling tool, but we already have revenue bond because we have a revenue bond authority in Montgomery County that does limited scope work, and this bill would expand its scope of work. And I just had a conversation with the director this morning about how this bill could help a county like mine, right? I may not be the best person to ask another part of your question, which is, does it only do tax increment? I think it does more than tax increment bonding.
Okay, because one of my related questions, in looking at the proposed naming conventions, I guess I was curious if a jurisdiction already has a revenue authority, how would that remain a distinct body, and how would these authorities interact?
What I imagine is with this enabling legislation, a local county, for example, with an existing revenue authority can decide to take advantage of this bill to expand the functions and the leverages to leverage tax increment financing for new development and redevelopment. But it could also do nothing and just keep it as it is. Or it can establish a whole new development entity that just aggressively does development in certain targeted communities, right? So it's up to local counties if they want to act or not and how to act.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And my final question, thank you, Madam Chair, is when we talk about assembling land for redevelopment potential, which is, I really appreciate that that's specifically identified as one of the powers, because that is so often a hurdle. We're often talking about a longer time frame. So I'm just curious how this would practically play out if you're issuing bonds to help you acquire land, but you're on a really pretty good timeline before you're going to see revenue coming in as a result of that. How does the TIF bond structure account for that potential lag time? I don't know if anyone can speak to that, or we can follow up offline.
I'll be happy to start. And then I
Thank
see a
you.
lot of eyes flashing back and forth.
you.
So how it would work is when you create the authority, you would issue a bond up front, utilize the incremental growth that occurs over a long period of time to come back and repay the bond. So yes, it will take a while. It could be 10, 20-year bond. But then the goal is to use that incremental growth that was spurred by the development that occurs within the district to pay back that bond. So you can have the cash up front and then pay it back over the period of the bond.
Okay, so when you issue the bonds, you'd have to build in enough cash to carry you through the initial years until you project revenue starting to come in. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Before you would even issue a bond, you do a lot of financial modeling to do a guesstimate and then utilize that model as your basis for what the baseline is, what the incremental growth could be, and how much bonding capacity you could have.
Okay.
Let me just say, that's how TIFs work now, so you're not, there's no additional exposure, or you're not extending the timeline, because when you do all that planning, you know when that incremental revenue is going to come in, and it will be many years down the road.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking if you're at the starting point of assembling properties, that timeline is that much longer. It's longer than I was thinking. It's longer than I'm familiar with in the TIFs that we've done in Howard County, right? But I guess you just build that in and take it into account. So thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you mentioned open meetings, and this would be in compliance with open meetings, but a lot of this would seem to fall under the real property acquisition exception, and that it would be in a closed meeting. So how, if you're working with multiple new authorities and entities, how would you maintain public transparency in that situation moving forward?
I think it's up to each local government to decide how that part is going to play out. Because the county council has, for example, you have Frederick County, right? County council has the oversight over this body. They can conduct audits, and they decide that they can confirm board members, and they can require meeting minutes and everything.
So a lot of this would fall under a closed meeting?
The only time it would fall under closed meeting is during negotiation. Before you could actually acquire, it would still have to be public open meeting. So, in the public vein.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hornberger.
Short questions here. So I'm hearing a lot of you can do that's already, and what's the delta between the status quo and the bill passing in TIFs?
Well, okay. You want me to start? Okay. So currently, we already, in the Maryland code, we already allow tax increment financing.
Yep.
And we just have very limited use for that. And also currently in the Maryland code, we already allow industrial development authorities, but these authorities do not have a lot of the functions that we spelled out in this bill. So that is why we are expanding both functions of the authority, including how they can call these authorities, as well as how they can use the money to invest directly in the project per se and cover administrative costs, or even decide to pay back the taxing district certain portion of that. And also it defines in more greater detail the kind of projects they can get involved in. So if you look at the bill, it has a long list of things, including parking structures, street lights, stormwater management, noise walls, landscaping, pedestrian walkways, and all of those things that are considered public amenities and infrastructure that can make a site more attractive and ready for development that currently you cannot use the tax increment financing for.
All right, and then the second question is, would this impact existing authorities that are already in place?
Yeah, it gives them more power to do more things if they so choose, since this is simply enabling. It doesn't change, they don't have to do anything that we put here.
What occurs when they default?
What occurs when they
So as I mentioned, IDA bonds are not backed by the taxing power of the government, but instead are supported by revenues generated by the district. And so if the IDA fails, or the bond fails, the project areas do not generate, or the project area does not generate significant project funds, then those losses are faced by the bond holders. Unlike general obligation bonds that most municipalities would issue, these are backed by the authority itself. And so the government's liability is limited to the extent of any explicit guarantees it provides. So it has to specifically say that it would provide a guarantee. In most cases, your local governments would not provide that guarantee. In some cases, the government may provide a moral obligation pledge, expressing its commitment to support the project and make payments if the IDA cannot. However, this moral obligation is not legally binding, and the government is not automatically responsible for the debt.
So if this authority goes out and snaps up a bunch of property at a premium rate, and then the buyer obviously walks away, or sorry, the seller obviously walks away very happy, and then they default on it, who's on the hook?
Again, it would be the bondholders, because of the authority is protecting, it's almost protecting from the local government. And again, the local government could do a moral obligation to pay, but is not required to, and it would not be legally binding.
And then the last question is, while these properties are under the auspice of this authority that you've created, are they off the tax rolls?
Yes, they would be. So the intent would be to get it back on the tax rolls as fast as possible, which is why some of the other tools that are listed in the bond, in the bill.
The reason I ask so many questions is we have one of these in Cecil, and they've been holding property for over 20 years. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Chief, for the bill. I think this question is probably for Mr. Cole. So I don't think the bill had a definition for affordable housing, but correct me if I'm wrong. So is the intention then that on the local side, they could decide what qualifies as affordable, and might that also include workforce housing?
Yes, absolutely. And again, this is simply when these localities are authorized to do it, it's often intentionally flexible for that purpose. But yes, affordable housing is generally understood and is defined elsewhere in the code as being below market rate housing. And so this would allow the locality, when they are developing, when they are authorizing the authority, to state, this is the housing that we would authorize you to create under your IDA.
Delegate Long.
Question's been answered. Thank you.
There's two of us. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, thank you for bringing this bill. I want to just circle back referencing oversight in a sense. And I've heard a lot of scenarios referencing charter forms of government with oversight. Can you give an example? And if this is too wordy, it doesn't make sense, I can get with you offline, but just referencing commission form or code home rule forms of government dealing with
Well, first of all, the local government has to establish this authority, right? This is an instrumentality of a local government. And the county executive in the current code would have the authority to appoint the board that provides oversight, and the county council approves the board. That is the basics of providing oversight, they can also require that they open all the meetings, that they keep all the records for public access and all of that. So yes, it's up to each county to decide.
Understood. And I only ask that because we don't have, certain counties don't have a county executive, they just have the Board of County Commissioners. I was just wondering.
The governing body.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Delegate Henson.
I did not know that my button was on, Chair. My apologies. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill.
Okay, I think that is the end of the questions. Thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 680.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you, everyone.
692. And that concludes the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee today. It is 3:36 according to my cell phone. So we will meet at 3:50 to vote. 3:50.